No, it's not bad, but it's not great either, is it?
Dragon Age the Veilguard is not a bad game. In fact, it's actually pretty fun, if you come in with the right sort of expectations. Low expectations. This is a game that could have gone either way for me, but because I went in and just enjoyed it for what it is, I had a really pleasant time. It's easy to find something unpleasant if you convince yourself ahead of time that you're not going to like it. When Dragon Age Veilguard came out, I was fairly reluctant to pick it up based on all the mixed reactions I was seeing. I'd been burned by Andromeda, one of BioWare's last titles, and I didn't want to go through that all again for $100. But the world seemed cool and the combat looked fun enough to make it worth the risk. I wasn't looking to be shamelessly critical going in, which made the entertaining moments pop that much more. Why, when approaching Veilguard, would you need to have an open mind to begin with? Well, if you look at some of the reviews, this is somehow both a 10 out of 10 masterpiece and also a 1 out of 10 pile of trash. A true enigma, to be sure. Now, is this a 10 out of 10 RPG like Baldur's Gate 3? No, but that's also an impossibly high bar. Is it better than the other titles from the same studio like Mass Effect? I mean, come on, I'm super biased there. But it is better than Andromeda in my opinion, even though the two are in a lot of ways very similar. Similar to the point where maybe if I just came into Andromeda with the same level of expectations I had with Veilguard, I may have actually been impressed. Or at least I'm sure I would have had more fun instead of hyper fixating on all the flaws it had to the point where I was hating my time with it. The people that straight up hate Veilguard seem to be mostly let down by their expectations, or by some extremely petty grievances around certain creative choices. You don't have to agree with all the creative decisions that a developer makes, but it's their game to make. And if those choices trigger you to the point where it makes a game unplayable, maybe it's time for some serious self-reflection. Outside of that group, what are the flaws of Veilguard that is netting it so many 1 out of 10 scores? I mean, the game does have flaws, certainly. It is not perfect. The writing alone is not great.
Make up for what?
For not being good enough? When it counted? I'm sorry, I can't. Not right now.
But some people see these flaws as sufficient enough to ignore everything else about the game that may be good. Perhaps the most irate group is the one that is upset that this Dragon Age game is tonally very different from the other 3 in the series, which is true. It may be that Veilguard's biggest shortcoming is the simple fact that it has Dragon Age in the title, which does set a certain level of expectations that it does falter against. But then again, Dragon Age fans haven't been happy with any entry since the first one. Veilguard is very different from its predecessors. Visually, the aesthetics are far more colorful, and not the typical dim shades of browns and yellows found in the other titles, but honestly, that is an improvement. Everything has a more, I guess you could call it, a DreamWorks look to it. Characters have softer designs, and enemies even look a little goofier instead of intimidating, but they all look fine as a cohesive package that you get used to very quickly. The most glaring difference is the shift away from this dark fantasy atmosphere to something a little more PG. While there still are some creepy and violent scenes, it all feels a lot safer, more filtered. The traditional edge of the Dragon Age universe, like the horrific use of blood magic, the corrupting force of lyrium, the brutal oppression of elves, the twisting deals with demons, and so on, are mostly ignored, downplayed, or pushed way into the background. There isn't even a real hint of any moral choices or moral ambiguity that were present in the previous titles. You'll never be asked to make a questionable choice or do something that could be seen as downright evil. At most, you just won't kill someone who deserves it. You just won't save them, Batman style. Rook, your main character, is part of this tonal shift. While I do like them more than the cocky cardboard cutout that Ryder from Andromeda was, Rook has a similar sort of problem in that they aren't really a character for you to project onto, but are instead a pre-made character where you can sort of flavor their responses from positive to a little more firmly positive. They are the Mr. Rogers of the group, and often, with hands on hips, solve problems by just teaching the value of empathy. Speaking of your companions, they continue this trend of positivity by all just getting along, with few occasions of any real internal conflict. No one clashes with you or others, and if they do, it gets resolved fairly quickly with no major negatives, except for one unavoidable choice about what city to save early on that will piss off someone, but they get over it. Drama between teammates can be a great source of storytelling, a way to see the world from opposing points of view, or wrestle with the choices that you've made, so it's a shame that that's missing here. While the roleplay element is limited to mostly being nice, it works with the overall tone and didn't have me stressing over any of my dialogue choices. The writing is not the strongest, with some lines being extremely awkward and a lot of the jokes not landing, but compared to some of the writing from Andromeda, this was Shakespearean. If you can look past the aforementioned problems, then what you'll find here is a lengthy, light-hearted fantasy RPG with some genuine moments of awe. Like I said, it is far more visually interesting than the previous entries, especially when it comes to the combat, which is flashy and more engaging than Inquisition ever was. The ability to dodge and parry is exciting, and being able to use melee as a mage was a special treat that I rarely get to enjoy. The enemies you fight get a little repetitive, they can be a little spongy, and your companions are immoral, but it's fun to set up explosive combos or fight the occasional dragon boss. The companions are written well enough that I was actually surprised I didn't end up hating any of them, like Sarah from Inquisition, or find any of them boring, like everybody from Andromeda. Some of them weren't the best, but at least I found them interesting enough to keep chatting with them and see their stories through to the end. The way Veilguard also manages to write in the race and background you have selected into conversations is very well done. These elements are consistently brought up by characters you engage with, which makes Rook feel more like a person that actually exists within the world. If you are an elf, people will refer to the rogue gods as your gods. If you are a crow and do missions for them, they will talk like they actually know who you are. I am a massive sucker for this kind of detail, as it really helps you to immerse yourself into the story. If you are expecting a dark fantasy with mature themes and choices that boil down to the lesser of two evils, then you will be disappointed by Veilguard. But if you come in expecting a more lighthearted, stylized fantasy adventure, then there is a lot to enjoy for what you get. Yes, this is a shift away from the previous entries, but that doesn't make it the worst game ever. It's cute, it has quips, some that land and some that don't, and there are heartfelt moments that have me feeling for some of these characters. Veilguard didn't make me miserable when I played it. It didn't stress me out or make me feel like I ever made the wrong choice, and sometimes that's just what you need in an adventure game. I had fun and look forward to playing more to see what I may have missed or how things might have played out differently with different choices. It would have been a shame to miss out on this experience because I held on to this idea of what I thought this game should be instead of enjoying it for what it is. That said, I'm still not gonna give Andromeda another chance. At least not yet. For now, I'm gonna go give Veilguard one more playthrough. Thanks for listening to me talk gaming.